It's time to focus on seniors with Helping Seniors TV. The television show designed to make you aware of senior issues and needs, as well as to acquaint you with the resources available to help you age in place and with dignity. Now, here's your host, Joe Steckler.
I'm Joe Steckler, and welcome to Focus on Seniors, the television arm of Helping Seniors of Brevard County. Our show is designed to provide you with information on how to develop your own aging and care plans. Our topic today is long-term care planning, and here with me is William Johnson, board-certified LLR attorney of William A. Johnson, PA. Welcome, Bill.
Hello, Joe.
I call the show long-term care planning, but I'm going to throw a mix of a little bit about long-term care planning insurance, Medicaid managed care, and Medicare and Medicaid are all in there because I've done some shows recently called Thinking Out of the Box and then talking about the importance of information and education. And I'm finding that so many people don't understand the basic principles underlying a good estate or financial plan. Well, and those are things you talk about.
Let's talk about the two biggest mistakes or myths. The first one is the belief that Medicare pays for long-term care. It does not. Medicare pays for rehab at a nursing home. Usually Part B pays 100% of days 1 through 20, and then there is a copay for days 21 through 100. After that, Medicare shuts off. There is no benefit beyond those 100 days for long-term care. So Medicare is, health insurance.
Right.
Part A is hospitalization, Part B is physician coverage, and Part D is your prescription drug. There is no long-term care benefit. So if you're relying on Medicare to pay for long-term care, you are going to be in for a rude awakening. The second thing I think people really get wrong about long-term care is how much it costs. Currently in our county, Joe, we're looking at nursing homes anywhere from $7,500 all the way to $10,000 a month.
That's right.
There was a national publication that did a study a few years ago, and people were off by thousands and thousands of dollars when they were thinking about the cost of these things. You know, assisted living starts at $3,600 a month. Then you can tack on maybe another $1,000 or $2,000 if you need a lot of assistance. And home care can be more expensive than the other two, depending on how much care you need. It's not unusual, as you know, to see $8,000 or $9,000 home health care bills. So it is a very expensive proposition for long-term care. I mean, people continually just ignore that this may crop up in their life at some point. And as you know, statistically, about 50% of seniors will have a brush with the system and somehow.
I tell you, today, I'm going to sort of date the show a little bit, but, well, I'll say it this way. Little did I realize 3 months ago, actually 2 months and 29 days ago, that I would walk my back therapist to the door, and the next thing I would be aware of was being in an ICU unit at Woodstock Hospital with a tube jammed down my throat, having suffered a stroke. And people seeing me on this television show with, for the most part, folks, my memory is intact. I remember most things, and I'm only joking. My memory's good. My speech is good. I had no disfigurement. I was very fortunate, but I had a bleed out, but it was a stroke. And in my case, it was complicated because I was on a drug called Coumadin to thin my blood because I had a dissecting aorta. Somebody should have killed me a long time ago, but it didn't. It left me alive, Bill, to do shows like this with you so that we could cause people to think about what they're not doing.
Right.
That's so important. Everything that you have talked about in every show I've ever done with you, almost every adverse effect of that show could have been forestalled had the people put in place very simple inexpensive legal documents to prevent that from happening.
Correct. And here, the main fix or the one that we want most people to take is long-term care insurance.
Yes.
Getting out there, get it early, around 55 years or so. If you get it, don't get it just for what today's prices are, but you need to get a cost of living rider on it so that as the prices escalate and go up, that the benefit under your long-term care plan follows those prices up. And even if you have one today and it's only paying $100 a day, keep it in place because it may make the difference between staying at home and not being able to stay at home.
My wife and I think personal examples are extremely important when we're talking about long-term care planning and estate planning, because you and I could talk all about this thing till we're blue in the face, but if people see what's happening to people or what has happened, I think it brings it closer to reality. I was in my 60s and before we took out long-term health care insurance. My wife is younger than I am, and her policy cost us any order of $2,000 a year. My policy is around $3,500. So we spend roughly $5,200 a year for long-term care insurance. But if I had to go into an assisted living facility, we would eat up in 1 month the cost of what that policy is.
Right.
I will make it very clear that I do have the cost of living rider. I have that. Excuse me, I have that on the policy, but that still does not pay the complete cost of what an assisted living facility would be. I get roughly $150 or $160 a day. It would come close to paying the cost of it. But not only does that long-term care policy, for planning purposes, folks, it would also cover me if I had to have nursing in my home, if I had to have, I go to an adult day health care, there's a couple of years provided for that, then it would kick into the assisted living phase, and then it would kick into the nursing home phase.
Correct.
But it's so important, and I strongly urge people watching this show, if you do go out and purchase long-term health care insurance, that before you sign on the dotted line, you take that policy to an elder law attorney and have that attorney, a person with your background, read the fine print. Because the fine print can be another rude awakening when a policy goes into effect.
Correct. And that used to be a lot more true in the early days of long-term care because when they were selling the policies, they were all over the place. Nowadays, they've come up with some more standardized long-term care policies, and including some different benefits that are quite nice. But yes, if you don't understand the policy, go to somebody who can explain it to you.
Yep. On one hand, you've got Medicare that helps pay your medical costs.
Correct.
If you're 65 and older. And with what's happening now with the new Affordable Health Care Act, the Medicaid part of it is what they're going to try and use to pay part of the insurance costs of this care plan.
Basically of the poor, yes.
Yes. But still, there are problems in trying to make different pieces of this new plan fit. The cost of care is going way up.
Right.
And without some kind of insurance, whether you have long-term care or you have a policy that pays for some of these costs, or you have a retirement plan that can help share the burden of the cost of care as you grow older, there have to be other ways that this whole equation gets paid for.
Right.
And that's where a good estate plan really comes into being, Bill.
Well, you should look at, when you're talking about estate planning, at least from my perspective, when you're doing elder law, I'm looking at what your estate planning documents, your will or your trust are. I'm looking at what your incapacity planning documents are, the durable power of attorney, the designation of healthcare surrogate, the living will. And then I'm looking at what is your long-term care options. If you had a long-term care event, how would you pay for that? Do you have very little assets that in no time at all you would be going on Medicaid to pay for it? Or do you have some assets that we need to look at protecting with long-term care insurance? Or do you have a lot of assets where you're simply self-insured? So every kind of plan that comes together should look at all three of those elements.
Okay. So many people look at some of the seminars that we advertise about in the paper, and people have a tendency, Bill, to look at what attorneys promote in the terms of care, business, and how we can access all this, and they say, we're circumventing the law, or that's not right, that's not fair. But our government did plan in 1965 with the
Social Security law.
Social Security laws and everything. They made provision that there were ways to legally use the law to help people through trying times.
Correct. And they came up with, it's Title 19 of the Social Security Act of 1965. That's what established Medicaid.
Right.
And they laid out it's means tested. So you have to meet certain income and asset tests. And there's a variety of rules and regulations that each state has adopted. Florida has a state Medicaid manual that outlines what the rules are for that system.
But if we use that system the way it was designed to be used, I think in many instances, we can drive down the cost of care.
Well, you go back to looking at long-term care insurance, okay? And there are 4 reasons I find people don't buy long-term care insurance. One is they're in complete denial. This is never going to happen to me, okay? Right. So they're just not going to pay for something. 2 is it's very expensive. Some people, you were talking about your bill being $5,000 something a year. Some people, that would be half their income. Some people are making only $13,000 a year on Social Security. They can't afford something like that. 3 is a lot of people, by the time they go to apply in their 60s or late 50s, have pre-existing conditions. They cannot get long-term care insurance. And 4, some people just think it's a bad investment. They're going to self-insure and do whatever it is or put a pot of money aside. But for all those different reasons, only 5% of Americans have bought long-term care insurance. So a lot of what I do at my office is people come to me and they're like, oh my God, we never realized that the bill was $9,000 a month. My husband's in there, we're going to go completely broke if we don't do something, because I cannot afford to pay that. And you can imagine at $9,000 a month, you go through a lot of money very quickly.
And I think that one of the things we came up with on Medicaid planning, now let's just talk about Medicaid for a minute. There are ways that we can smartly use the Medicaid system to help pay these bills. And if we do it the right way, we can use the Medicaid money, personal assets, to put these things together in a mix and match program so that we can pay bills and still keep people in their homes and still do a lot of things. And that's one of the things that an elder law attorney does.
Right. And we show you how to navigate the different systems, whether it be the Medicaid system or in our particular county, we have a lot of veterans. There is a VA benefit called aid in attendance that maybe a family would be eligible for. So we can look at that. We can look at Medicaid. We can look at community services. We have Meals on Wheels here. We also have a lot of church groups that help out and church organizations. Then you look at your family, your friends, and we try and take that total look at what are all the resources that are available, and then put it all together to see how we can come up and find, get, and pay for good care.
Let me ask you a question, Al.
Okay.
As an elder law attorney, you just covered a whole gambit of services. As an attorney, how many attorneys do you think we have in Brevard County?
Oh, we've got, I don't know, a few hundred, I would think.
We have a bunch.
Yeah.
But let's say if we have 1,000, we do it. How many of those 1,000 of attorneys would even begin to know what you just mentioned on ranges of services, Meals on Wheels, families, churches, everything, outside of an elder law attorney or somebody who works in this area of the law? How much do you think other people know about all the services and forces that you can bring to bear on a problem?
I think here in Brevard County, probably 10 or so. That's about it.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. And I won't name all the names, but I could probably name them all.
Right.
You sit on the board of this organization called Helping Seniors of Brevard County. And I think one of the reasons you agreed to sit on the board was because you know the value of information and education, and not only estate planning, legal planning, financial planning, but just the living of life.
Right. You know, getting the knowledge out there is half the battle. People have so many misconceptions. They think the nursing home's going to take their house, or Medicaid's going to take their house. In Florida, that's not the case. Our state constitution protects the homestead, but everybody's listening to their neighbor who moved from some other state who tells them that the nursing home's going to come and take the house. That's about the most distressing thing you can tell a spouse. Your husband's in the nursing home, or your wife's in the nursing home, and when they get done, they're going to take your house. It's a total falsity in Florida. Our state constitution protects the house. So there are a lot of misinformation out there that needs to be dispelled, and get a lot of good information out there. And that's why we do these shows, and I do seminars, and we write articles and print books and so forth and so on, is to get the good information out there.
Yeah, I'm not going to say this to plug your organization, but I am going to say, because you happen to have a book that's very envied by other attorneys, and it's your estate planning book, long-term care planning book.
Right. And
if people watching this show, if they really wanted to get a copy of this book, it's about that thick.
Yeah, yeah. You give them out for free.
You give them out for free.
Right.
How would they call? How would they get it? What phone number would they call?
321-253-1667.
253-1667.
Yeah, just ask for, it's called the Orange Book, is what it's known by.
What's it called?
The Orange Book.
The Orange Book.
Yeah.
I gave a seminar, Bill, and I did this. I spoke at a conference for the Southern Deanery of the Catholic Churches of Orlando, the Southern Deanery Diocese, and there were 13 Catholic churches in the deanery, and we had over 300 people that came to the conference, and you gave me 300 plus of the books to give out to people, and once they got them back to their churches, I had a request for 50 more.
Right.
So the point is that the information is there, folks, but you have to be willing to try to access it. You have to be willing to listen to what the information is telling you.
And you have to be willing to, not keep your head stuck in the sand.
Yeah, well, the ostrich trick, it doesn't work. A thing that you and I have talked about that Florida passed in 2013 was the privatization of the Medicaid, Medicaid managed care. And we, in many respects, are changing how we give out the Medicaid money.
Right. In August of 2013, Florida did what they call a super waiver, and it brought in the whole comprehensive managed care system to initially the long-term care area and now to all of Medicaid. And that is basically privatized the whole Medicaid system in the state of Florida.
A loaded question for you. What is your opinion of the privatization of Medicaid managed care? Do you think it's good or bad?
I think the jury's still out.
Okay.
It all depends on the per capita reimbursement rate. And that is how much the states pay these organizations to take care of people. Because as you get more and more people in the system, and if the state comes under a budget crunch, it is so easy for the state to simply say, instead of paying $1,200 a month, we'll pay $1,000. And when they start playing that game, that's when the care is going to drop off significantly for these people.
Yep. Because I have in this book I have here, I've got a 29-page document in there that talks about the Medicaid managed care, and a twofold objective was cost containment and profit maximization. And if we bear in mind that we still have to give out care and we got to be honest about what it's costing us, then we'll do a pretty good job. But my concern, Bill, and I think that this has been a very frank show today. We're not talking apples and oranges. We're talking about real life. Under the privatization, the way there are 4 major companies that are taking care of Brevard County, Florida right now. And the last readout I had, 2 of those companies were not even answering phone calls to give out care.
Right.
And that's not good. Because let's say if the reimbursement is $1,300 a month, that company has to decide what they want their profit margin to be. And that's just the way companies work. They have to make a living, understand. But how good does that living have to be? That's the part that...
Well, when you start diverting money to profits, that means you're diverting less money to the care for the individuals.
Yes.
So there are a lot of groups out there, watchdog groups, watching that because they want to make sure the most dollars go into the care for the patients and not into somebody's pocket.
Yeah. And I wasn't aware until, it was roughly 6 months ago, I read an article in the Washington Post that the IRS actually changed the 990 for nonprofits so that the nonprofits could be more honest in their reporting of what their losses were and what their profits were, so that the IRS could make a better determination of who should remain a nonprofit, who should not be a nonprofit.
Right.
Because it's all a part of this long-term care system. But as an elder law attorney, do you sense that what we're thinking in the Florida legislature about how we're trying to manage our monies, do you think that we're headed in the right direction, or could we do things differently?
We probably could do things a little differently. I'm not so sure what you could do. Realize that we are going to have and be inundated with quite a few seniors. You know, the demographic wave is coming. There's an explosion of people over 65. There's an explosion of people over 85. We're simply going to have to do more with less. There just is that reality of when it comes to budget crunches. I'm not, with me, I'm not so sure the privatization model works. I haven't seen enough of what's going on with it. Historically, usually privatization works for the first couple of years, and then something happens.
Yes.
They start cutting the reimbursement rate, or the companies start figuring out ways around the rules, and less money gets going to care. So we'll have to see down the road how this is working.
Yep. And you mentioned the word Alzheimer's a couple of times when we first started the show. Alzheimer's is a very, it's a very ticklish subject for many people to talk about because it's something that you don't willingly catch, you don't get rid of it. It's something that happens, so we don't know what causes it.
Well, it's also one of the most discriminatory diseases you can have. You know, if you come down with cancer, Medicare will pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to treat you.
Yeah.
If you come down with Alzheimer's disease, here's a prescription for Namenda Aracet, and have a nice day.
And you know what I found out the other day? They are refusing to pay the prescription cost of Namenda. Were you aware of that?
No, I was not.
Yeah, it's something that I have to look into that. But
so depending on what disease you get, can depend on what the government will pay out.
That's a tough area because some of these diseases cost literally hundreds of thousands of dollars, and families simply cannot pay for them.
Right.
That's why we don't have a lot of time, but I do want to point out that currently before the Florida legislature is a bill to increase funding at the state level for Alzheimer's research.
Right.
I work with Alzheimer's patients for 25 years, and I'm not in favor of that. Mm-hmm. And the reason I'm not in favor of it is because I think that the federal government is spending millions and millions and millions of dollars on research through the National Institute of Health, and it's more like a laboratory type research, whereas I found that the state research funding is more like for the study of books. And it's not really research that's done to determine cause and effect relationship. It's more of a book type thing. And I think some of those dollars could be more wisely used for overall senior care. And that's an objection I have. But that's why we have Republicans and Democrats, and that's why we have people that
legislators.
Say that.
Yeah.
That's right. What last comment would you make, Bill?
Well, I think you should have a plan, regardless of which way you're going to go. If you're going to try and qualify for Medicaid, if you're going to have long-term care insurance, if you're going to self-insure, I think you should have a plan. I think you should sit down with your loved ones. I think they should know what the plan is. So when the time comes and you get a stroke or you have Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or something like that, they all know what the plan is. And you should review that plan every so many years.
And review it with a qualified, certified, board-certified elder law attorney.
Correct.
Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
And I want to thank you, viewer, for watching today's episode of Focusing on Seniors. If you have questions or comments, please call us at 321-473-7770. For more information on senior care and resources, visit our website, helpingseniorsofbrevard.com. Be sure to listen to Focus on Seniors on radio station 1300 AM WMEL every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. And look for us in your Florida Today's newspaper health section every Thursday for our Focus on Seniors column. I'm Joe Steckler, and thank you for joining us today for Focus on Seniors. Thanks, Bill.
You're welcome.
It's a good show.